The encounter. Alex had always thought he was just an ordinary engineer. He worked on interstellar ships, fixing what others broke during their travels. It was a quiet, predictable life. But that changed the day his small ship, the Stellar Drift, was pulled out of hyperspace by a sudden and unexplained energy surge. The alarms in his cockpit blared as red lights flashed. Alex tightened his grip on the controls, his heart racing. What the hell is going on? He muttered to himself. The navigation system was down, the sensors were scrambled, and a strange, pulsing signal was jamming his communications. He managed to stabilize the ship just enough to land on a barren, rocky moon. As the ship's thrusters sputtered to a halt, Alex exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Great, just great," he said, staring out the window at the desolate landscape. The moon was dimly lit by its distant sun, casting eerie shadows over jagged rocks. Grabbing his toolkit and slipping on his helmet, Alex stepped out onto the surface. The air was thin and cold, and his breath fogged up the visor of his suit. His first priority was to locate the source of the energy surge and figure out if it had caused the ship's malfunction. As he walked, a strange hum filled the air. It wasn't mechanical. It was melodic, almost like a song carried by the wind. Alex paused, looking around. "What is that?" he whispered. The sound seemed to be coming from a nearby canyon, its walls glowing faintly with a soft, blue light. Curiosity got the better of him. Against his better judgment, Alex climbed down into the canyon, the hum growing louder with each step. The blue glow intensified, and he soon found himself standing in front of an ancient-looking structure, half buried in the rock. Symbols etched into the walls shimmered as if alive, pulsing in time with the hum. "Okay, this is officially weird," Alex muttered, running his gloved fingers over the markings. They were unlike anything he had seen before. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, and a blinding light erupted from the structure. He stumbled backward, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, a figure stood where the glow had been. She was tall, slender, and otherworldly. Her skin shimmered like silver under moonlight, and her eyes glowed with an ethereal blue. She wore a flowing garment that seemed to move on its own, like liquid silk. Alex froze, his heart pounding. The alien girl tilted her head, studying him with a calm but intense gaze. Then, in a voice as soft as a whisper, she spoke. "You're mine now. Come see my world." Her words sent a chill down Alex's spine. "What? Who are you?" he stammered, taking a cautious step back. She smiled, a mysterious curve of her lips that held both kindness and danger. "I am Reluna. You have entered my domain, human. And now your fate is bound to mine." Alex didn't like the sound of that. He glanced around, looking for an escape route, but the canyon walls seemed taller and more imposing than before. "Listen, I didn't mean to trespass. My ship crashed, and I was just trying to—" "Silence," Reluna interrupted, raising her hand. The hum in the air grew louder, resonating in Alex's chest. "You were brought here for a reason. Illyra has chosen you." "Illyra?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. "What's that?" Reluna gestured to the glowing structure behind her. "It is the heart of my world. And now it has chosen you as its guardian." "Guardian?" Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Look, I'm just an engineer. I fix ships, not whatever this is. You've got the wrong guy." But Reluna shook her head, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "Illyra never makes mistakes. You are the one." Before Alex could protest, the ground beneath him glowed with the same blue light. He felt a strange warmth spread through his body, as if the planet itself was reaching out to him. Symbols appeared on his arms, glowing faintly through his suit. "What's happening?" Alex shouted, panic rising in his chest. "You are being marked," Reluna said calmly. "The bond has begun." "Bond? I didn't agree to any bond." Alex tried to step back, but his legs wouldn't move. It was as if the ground had rooted him in place. Reluna stepped closer, her expression softening. Do not fight it. Illyra's bond is a gift. It will protect you, and you will protect us. I don't even know who us is, Alex yelled. Reluna placed a hand on his shoulder, and the warmth intensified. You will understand soon enough. Come with me, Alex. There is much to show you. As the glow around him faded, Alex found himself able to move again. But now, strange symbols pulsed faintly on his arms, and the hum in the air seemed to follow his every step. He looked at Reluna, who extended a hand toward him. Trust me, she said softly. Alex hesitated. Everything in him screamed to run, to get back to his ship and leave this moon behind. But something about Reluna, her voice, her presence, made it impossible to turn away. Reluctantly, he took her hand. And with that, Alex's journey into the unknown began. The hidden world. Alex barely had time to process what had just happened. The moment he took Reluna's hand, the canyon around him blurred, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to vanish. A strange pull gripped him, like being yanked through a tunnel of light. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing in a world that defied belief. The air was thick with a golden glow, shimmering like liquid sunlight. Towering trees stretched into the sky, their leaves sparkling as if made of crystal. Rivers of silver water snaked through the land, their gentle currents humming in harmony with the environment. Strange, winged creatures with translucent bodies flitted between the trees, leaving trails of light in their wake. Where are we? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. This is Illyra, Reluna said, her tone both proud and reverent. My world. Now, yours as well. Alex took a shaky step forward, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, glowing moss beneath him. The air smelled sweet, like a blend of flowers and fresh rain. It was beautiful, otherworldly, but something about it felt off. This place, it feels alive, Alex said, turning to Reluna. It is, she replied. Illyra is not just a planet. It is a living entity. It breathes, thinks, and feels, and it has chosen you. Alex frowned, his unease growing. Why me? I'm just a guy trying to fix his ship and go home. Reluna's gaze softened, but there was a flicker of something deeper, sadness, perhaps. Illyra does not choose lightly. You carry something within you, Alex, something rare. It is why the bond was formed. Before Alex could press her for more answers, a low, rumbling growl echoed through the air. His heart skipped a beat as he spun around, searching for the source. The glowing trees seemed to shiver, their crystalline leaves rustling like a warning. What was that? Alex asked, his voice tight with fear. Reluna's expression hardened. Illyra is beautiful, but it is also dangerous. You must stay close to me. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and from the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything Alex had ever seen. It stood on 4 legs, each one covered in jagged armor-like scales. Its eyes glowed with the same eerie blue light as the symbols on Alex's arms, and its jaws dripped with a viscous silver liquid. Alex instinctively took a step back. What the hell is that thing? A sentinel, Reluna said calmly, though her body tensed. It protects Illyra from intruders. Wait, I'm not an intruder, Alex protested. You brought me here. Reluna held up her hand, and the sentinel froze, its glowing eyes locked on Alex. It does not trust you yet. The bond is still new. Alex's heart raced as the creature sniffed the air, its glowing gaze narrowing. For a terrifying moment, it stepped closer, its growl vibrating through Alex's chest. He braced himself, expecting the worst. But then the symbols on his arms flared brighter, and the sentinel stopped. It let out a low, guttural sound that almost sounded like approval before retreating back into the shadows. Alex exhaled shakily. Okay, that was terrifying. Is this going to happen every time something doesn't trust me? Reluna smiled faintly. Only until Illyra fully accepts you. Come, there is more to see. Reluctantly, Alex followed her through the shimmering forest. The further they went, the more unsettling the world became. The trees seemed to lean toward him as he passed, their crystalline branches reaching out like fingers. The rivers hummed louder, the melody twisting into something almost mournful. Finally, they arrived at a massive glowing structure nestled in the heart of the forest. It looked like a temple, its walls carved with the same symbols that now marked Alex's skin. "This is the core," Reluna said, gesturing toward the temple. "The heart of Illyra's power. It is here that your true purpose will be revealed." "My true purpose?" Alex echoed, shaking his head. "You keep saying that, but I didn't ask for any of this. I just want to fix my ship and leave." Reluna turned to him, her expression unreadable. "There is no leaving, Alex. Not anymore." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean? No leaving? You can't just..." Before he could finish, the ground beneath him lit up, and the symbols on his arms began to burn. A surge of energy coursed through him, and his knees buckled as visions flooded his mind. He saw Reluna's people, once thriving, now reduced to ruins. He saw Illyra torn apart by conflict, its beauty scarred by war. And then he saw himself, standing at the temple's center, holding a brilliant, glowing orb. When the visions faded, Alex was left trembling, his breath coming in shallow gasps. What was that?" he managed to choke out. "It was Illyra showing you the truth," Reluna said softly. "Your presence here is no accident, Alex. You are the key to our survival." Alex stared at her, his mind reeling. He had come here by chance, or so he thought. But now, it seemed his entire life had been leading to this moment. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice barely audible. "No," Reluna agreed, her gaze steady. "But Illyra has chosen you, and the bond cannot be undone." As Alex looked up at the glowing temple, dread and awe warred within him. He didn't understand why he was here or what Illyra wanted from him. But one thing was clear: there was no turning back now. Secrets of the bond. Alex sat on the smooth, glowing floor of the temple, his back against the cold, pulsing walls. The silence was deafening except for the faint hum that seemed to emanate from everywhere. It was as if the entire structure was alive, breathing, watching. His arms still glowed faintly, the strange symbols etched into his skin burning softly like embers. "This isn't fair," he muttered, running his hands through his hair. "I didn't ask for any of this." Reluna stood nearby, her expression unreadable. She had remained quiet since Alex's collapse, allowing him time to process what he had seen. But now she approached him, her footsteps light as whispers. "You're still resisting," she said softly, kneeling in front of him. "Of course I'm resisting." Alex snapped, glaring at her. "1 minute, I'm fixing ships. The next, I'm in some glowing alien temple being told I'm part of a bond I never agreed to. What do you expect?" Reluna sighed, her gaze dropping for a moment. "I understand your anger, Alex. Truly, I do. But you must realize that this is bigger than you or me. Illyra is dying, and without the bond, it cannot survive." Alex shook his head, his frustration bubbling over. "You keep saying that like it explains everything. What is this bond? What does it want from me? Why me, of all people?" Reluna hesitated, and for the first time, Alex saw a flicker of doubt in her glowing eyes. "The bond is complicated," she admitted. "It is not just a connection to Illyra, it is a connection to me." Alex froze. "To you?" She nodded. "Illyra's power is tied to its people, and I am the last of them. When my kind perished, the bond became unstable, its energy fading. Illyra reached out, searching for someone who could restore balance. It chose you because..." She trailed off, her voice faltering. "Because why?" Alex pressed, leaning forward. Because you carry a strength within you, Reluma said finally. A strength that is rare, even among humans. The bond recognized it and pulled you here. Through our connection, Illyra can be saved. Alex stared at her, his mind racing. A strength within him. He didn't feel strong. He felt lost, overwhelmed, and utterly out of his depth. And if I refuse? He asked quietly. Reluna's expression darkened. If you break the bond, Illyra will collapse. Everything you see, the forests, the rivers, the creatures, will wither and die. And I. She paused, her voice trembling. I will die with it. Alex's heart sank. He didn't want this responsibility. He hadn't asked for it. But the thought of Reluma, the alien girl who had saved him, guided him, and now stood before him with pleading eyes, disappearing forever, was unbearable. Before he could respond, the hum in the air grew louder. The walls of the temple began to pulse, and a low guttural sound echoed from outside. What's happening now? Alex asked, his voice tinged with panic. Reluna's eyes widened in alarm. The bond is incomplete. The imbalance is drawing predators. Predators, Alex repeated, his stomach twisting. She grabbed his hand, pulling him to his feet. We have to leave. Now. As they exited the temple, the once beautiful forest looked different. The shimmering trees were dull, their crystalline leaves falling like broken glass. The rivers of silver water had turned murky, their harmonious hum now a discordant wail. And then Alex saw them. Dark, shadowy creatures slithered between the trees, their forms shifting and twisting like smoke. Their glowing red eyes fixed on him, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over him. What are those things? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Shades, Reluna said grimly. They are born from the imbalance. They feed on fear, doubt, and chaos. They will stop at nothing to destroy us. One of the creatures lunged, its smoky tendrils reaching for Alex. He stumbled back, his heart pounding. Before it could strike, Reluna raised her hand, and a burst of blue light erupted from her palm, driving the shade back. Stay close to me, she commanded, her voice firm. Alex obeyed, following her as they weaved through the dying forest. The shades grew bolder, their attacks more frequent. Reluna fought them off with bursts of light, but Alex could see the strain in her every movement. Finally, they reached a clearing, the shades hesitating at its edge, as if held back by an invisible barrier. Reluna collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. Are you okay? Alex asked, kneeling beside her. I'm fine, she said, though her pale face told a different story. But we can't keep running. The bond must be completed, or the shades will overwhelm us. Alex clenched his fists, his mind racing. He didn't fully understand what the bond entailed, but he knew one thing. If he didn't act, Reluna and Illyra would be lost. What do I have to do? He asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Reluna looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with both hope and sorrow. You must accept the bond completely. Open yourself to Illyra. Trust me, Alex. Trust us. He took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Then, with a nod, he said the words that would change his fate forever. Let's finish this. Betrayal and revelation. The warmth Alex had felt after accepting the bond didn't last long. Instead, it was replaced by an unsettling pull in his chest, as if Illyra itself was trying to rewrite him from the inside out. He lay on the forest floor, staring up at the shimmering canopy, his breath shallow. Reluna sat nearby, her back to him, silent and tense. You're not telling me everything, are you? Alex said, breaking the heavy silence. Reluna didn't turn to face him. You wouldn't understand, she replied, her voice distant. Alex sat up, his frustration bubbling to the surface. Try me. I've been thrown into this alien world, bonded to a living planet, and nearly killed by smoke monsters. I think I deserve some answers." She hesitated, then stood and began pacing, her hands clenched at her sides. "Illyra is alive, yes," she began, her voice low. "But it is also broken. My people. We were its guardians, its lifeblood. But we failed it. I failed it." Alex frowned. "Failed it how?" Riluna's glowing eyes met his, filled with a guilt so deep it made Alex's chest ache. "We were greedy. We took more than Illyra could give. Our cities grew too large, our power too great. We bled the planet dry until it began to turn on us." Alex's stomach twisted. "And the shades? They are what remains of my people," she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Twisted echoes of their despair and anger, cursed to roam the ruins of our mistakes." Alex stared at her, trying to process the weight of her confession. "So what does that have to do with me?" Riluna looked away, her jaw tightening. Illyra tried to heal itself after the fall, but it couldn't. It needed something, someone, from beyond. It hit Alex like a thunderbolt. "You brought me here on purpose," he said, his voice sharp with realization. Riluna flinched but didn't deny it. Illyra called out to the stars. "I only followed its will." "You manipulated me," Alex said, his anger rising. "You let me think this was some kind of accident, that I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But you planned this." "It wasn't like that," Riluna said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know it would be you. Illyra chose you, Alex. I had no say in the matter." Alex stood, pacing now, his mind racing. "And this bond? What does it actually do? What's the cost?" Riluna's silence was answer enough. "There's always a cost," Alex said bitterly. "What aren't you telling me?" Before she could respond, a deep guttural voice echoed through the clearing. "She hides the truth because she fears you will run." Alex spun around, searching for the source. Emerging from the shadows was one of the shades, but this one was different. It was larger, its form more defined, almost humanoid. Its glowing red eyes burned with intelligence, and its voice was eerily calm. "Who are you?" Alex demanded, stepping back instinctively. "I am what remains of Illyra's first guardian," the shade said, its voice carrying a weight that made Alex's skin crawl. "I was like you once, chosen to bond with this world. But I was betrayed, just as you are now." "Don't listen to it," Riluna shouted, stepping between Alex and the shade. The shade laughed, a hollow, haunting sound. "She fears you will learn the truth, that the bond does not save you, Alex. It consumes you. It will take everything you are and leave you as nothing more than a husk, a shadow like me." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He turned to Riluna, his voice shaking. "Is that true? Will the bond kill me?" Riluna's glowing eyes filled with tears. "It doesn't have to. If we succeed, if we restore Illyra, you can survive. But if we fail..." She trailed off, her silence saying everything. "You lied to me," Alex whispered, his voice laced with betrayal. "I had no choice," Riluna pleaded. "You are our only hope. Without you, Illyra will die, and so will I." The shade stepped closer, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You don't have to sacrifice yourself for her lies, human. Help me, and I will show you how to break the bond. You can escape this nightmare and return to your world." Alex looked between Riluna and the shade, his mind a storm of confusion and anger. Riluna had manipulated him, but the shade's words carried a venom he couldn't ignore. "Why should I trust either of you?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his heart. The shade's red eyes burned brighter. "Because I was like you. I know the pain of betrayal. She seeks to use you, while I seek to free you." Riluna stepped forward, her glowing hand reaching for Alex. "Please, Alex, you must trust me. The bond is dangerous, yes, but together we can save Illyra. We can save each other." Alex clenched his fists, the weight of the decision crushing him. On one side, a shade that promised freedom but carried a sinister aura. On the other, Riluna, who had lied but now stood vulnerable, her fate intertwined with his. The ground trembled beneath him, the forest groaning as if the world itself awaited his choice. "I don't know who to believe," Alex admitted, his voice cracking. "Then trust yourself," the shade hissed. "Trust me," Riluna whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Alex closed his eyes, his heart pounding as he took a deep breath. And then he made his decision. The threat within. The air around Alex grew heavy, charged with an oppressive energy that made it hard to breathe. The glowing forest trembled, and the faint hum of Illyra's life force grew chaotic and discordant. Something was wrong, very wrong. Alex stood at the edge of the clearing, his fists clenched as he stared out into the shifting shadows of the forest. He could feel the bond pulsing in his chest, stronger and more erratic than ever, like an unseen force trying to claw its way out of him. "Riluna," he called, his voice echoing through the clearing. She appeared moments later, her movements hurried, her silver hair glowing faintly under the eerie light of Illyra. "What's happening?" she asked, her eyes darting nervously. "You tell me." Alex snapped, his anger bubbling to the surface. "Ever since the bond strengthened, I've felt like I'm being torn apart from the inside. And now the whole forest is acting like it's about to collapse." Riluna's expression darkened, and for a moment, Alex saw something in her eyes that unsettled him. Fear. "The bond is unstable," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Illyra is struggling to integrate your energy. It's rejecting parts of you. Rejecting me." Alex repeated, his stomach twisting. "What does that mean? Am I going to die?" Riluna hesitated, and the silence between them felt like a dagger. "If the bond fully fractures, it will destroy both you and Illyra," she said finally. Alex took a step back, his chest tightening. "So this was the plan all along. Tie me to your dying planet, and hope I can save it before it kills me." Riluna's gaze fell to the ground. "I didn't know it would be this unstable," she said softly. "I thought you could handle it. I believed you were strong enough." "Strong enough?" Alex barked, his voice rising. "You don't even know me. You pulled me into this mess because your world is falling apart, and now you're telling me it might kill us both." Before Riluna could respond, the ground beneath them shook violently. A deep guttural roar echoed through the forest, and the shadows began to shift and writhe. "What now?" Alex demanded, his heart pounding. Riluna's face paled. "It's the core. It's awakening." "The core," Alex repeated, his anger quickly giving way to dread. She nodded, her voice urgent. "The heart of Illyra. It's alive, but it's also fragile. The instability of the bond must have triggered it. If it fully awakens in this state, it will lash out, and it won't distinguish between us and the shades." As if on cue, a massive fissure split the ground before them, and from it emerged a monstrous form. It looked like a twisted amalgamation of the shades Alex had seen before, but far larger and more menacing. Its body was composed of writhing shadows, and its glowing red eyes burned with rage. Riluna stepped in front of Alex, her hands glowing with blue energy. "Stay back," she said, her voice firm. Alex clenched his fists, the symbols on his arms flaring with light. "I'm not just going to stand here while that thing tries to kill us." Riluna glanced back at him, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. "You don't understand. This isn't just another shade. It's a manifestation of the core's anger. Fighting it will only make things worse." "Then what do we do?" Alex asked, his frustration mounting. Riluna hesitated, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "We need to stabilize the bond. If we can bring balance to Illyra's energy, the core will calm." "Stabilize the bond? How?" Alex demanded. She stepped closer to him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "You need to fully open yourself to Illyra," she said, her voice trembling. No more holding back. No more doubt. The bond can only work if you truly accept it. Alex stared at her, his mind racing. Every instinct in him screamed to run, to fight, to do anything but give himself over completely to this alien world and its mysterious power. But deep down, he knew Reluna was right. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Tell me what to do." Reluna nodded, her expression softening. "Close your eyes. Focus on the bond. Feel its energy and let it flow through you. Don't fight it. Embrace it." Alex closed his eyes, his breathing shaky. He could feel the bond pulsing in his chest, chaotic and wild, like a storm threatening to tear him apart. Slowly, he let go of his fear, his anger, his doubt. He opened himself to the bond, allowing its energy to fill him completely. The moment he did, the symbols on his arms flared with a brilliant blue light, and the chaotic hum of the forest began to steady. The monstrous form before them roared, its body trembling as the light from Alex's arms pierced through it. Reluna stepped back, her eyes wide as she watched Alex's transformation. "You're doing it," she said, her voice filled with awe. The bond's energy surged, connecting Alex not just to Illyra, but to Reluna as well. He could feel her thoughts, her emotions, her pain. He saw glimpses of her past, the destruction of her people, her desperation to save Illyra, her guilt over bringing him into this. And in that moment, Alex understood. The monstrous form let out one final roar before dissolving into a cloud of light, the shadows retreating back into the fissure. The ground steadied, and the forest's glow began to return, its harmony restored. Alex opened his eyes, his body trembling from the effort. Reluna caught him as he staggered, her glowing eyes filled with relief. "You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved us." Alex looked at her, his chest heaving. "Not yet. This was just the beginning, wasn't it?" Reluna nodded, her expression somber. "The core is calm for now, but the bond isn't fully complete. There's still more to do." Alex sighed, his shoulders sagging. He had barely survived this, and the hardest part was still ahead. But for the first time, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could save Illyra and each other. The final stand. The forest was silent, an unsettling calm hanging over Illyra. Alex could feel it, the bond pulsing faintly within him, like a heartbeat, fragile but alive. Reluna stood beside him, her glowing eyes scanning the horizon. They both knew this was it, the last chance to save Illyra, or let it fall. "How do we finish this?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his mind. Reluna's gaze flickered to him, her expression both determined and weary. "The core is calmed, but its balance is still unstable. It's calling to us, deep within the heart of Illyra." Alex frowned. "Calling? You mean it's alive enough to talk to us?" She nodded. "In a way, the core is the essence of Illyra, its mind and soul. It's waiting for us to complete the bond, to make it whole again, but we'll have to face its test." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "Test? What kind of test?" Reluna hesitated, her hands curling into fists. "The core will confront us with our greatest fears, our deepest regrets. If we falter, if we fail, the bond will shatter, and Illyra with it." Alex stared at her, his jaw tightening. He had already faced shades, near death, and the weight of a dying world pressing down on him. What more could Illyra throw at him? "Fine," he said, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." Reluna placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm despite the tension in the air. "You've come this far, Alex. I believe in you." He met her glowing gaze and nodded. Together, they walked toward the glowing temple that loomed in the distance, its crystalline walls pulsing with an eerie light. Inside the temple, the air felt thick, almost suffocating. The hum of the core was louder now, resonating in Alex's chest, As they descended deeper into its chambers, the light grew brighter, almost blinding. Finally, they reached the heart of the temple, a massive, spherical chamber with walls that shimmered like liquid starlight. At the center floated the core itself, a glowing orb of energy that pulsed with a strange, hypnotic rhythm. "This is it," Reluna whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex stepped closer, the symbols on his arms flaring in response to the core's light. He could feel its power, its immense presence, but there was something else, something darker lurking beneath the surface. Suddenly, the light of the core flickered, and the chamber grew cold. Shadows began to swirl around them, forming into shapes that sent a chill down Alex's spine. "Is this the test?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his chest. "Yes," Reluna said, her voice trembling. "Be ready. It will try to break you." The shadows solidified, and Alex's breath caught in his throat. Before him stood a figure he hadn't seen in years, his younger brother, Ethan. Ethan's eyes were empty, his expression cold. "You left me," the figure said, its voice echoing unnaturally. "You abandoned me when I needed you most." Alex's heart ached. He knew this wasn't real, but the guilt surged within him all the same. Ethan had died years ago in an accident Alex couldn't prevent, and the memory still haunted him. "I didn't leave you," Alex said, his voice shaking. "I tried to save you." Lies," the shadow hissed, stepping closer. "You were too weak to protect me, just like you're too weak to save this world." Alex clenched his fists, the symbols on his arms glowing brighter. "I wasn't weak," he said, his voice growing firmer. "And I'm not weak now. I couldn't save Ethan, but I can save Illyra." The shadow let out a piercing shriek before dissolving into smoke. Reluna's voice broke the silence. "You passed the first test, but there will be more." The core flared again, and the chamber shifted. This time, it was Reluna who froze, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Before her stood a group of figures, tall, shimmering beings that radiated an eerie light. "They're gone because of you," one of them said, its voice harsh. "You failed us, Reluna. You doomed our people." "No," she whispered, her body trembling. "I tried to save you. I did everything I could. But it wasn't enough," the figure spat. "And now you've dragged an innocent human into your mess. How long until he falls because of your failure too?" Alex stepped forward, his voice cutting through the air. "She hasn't failed," he said firmly. "And she's not alone. We're going to fix this together." The figures turned to him, their gazes piercing. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just another pawn, too blind to see the truth?" Alex felt the bond surge within him, its energy pushing back against the shadows. "I don't care what you think," he said. "Reluna and I are going to save Illyra, no matter what it takes." The figures dissolved, their voices fading into silence. As the shadows retreated, the core's light grew steady once more. Alex and Reluna stood side by side, their breaths ragged but determined. "You did it," Reluna said, her voice filled with relief. "We did it," Alex corrected, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The core pulsed brighter, its energy washing over them. The bond flared to life, and Alex felt its power coursing through him, stronger and more stable than ever before. The chamber began to glow with a warm, golden light, and Alex knew they had succeeded, at least for now. But as he looked at Reluna, he saw the determination in her eyes. "This isn't over, is it?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not yet, but we're closer than we've ever been." Together, they turned to face the core, ready for whatever came next. A new beginning. The glow of the core enveloped the entire chamber, its warm, golden light pushing back the lingering shadows. Alex stood at the center, the symbols on his arms blazing like stars. His breath was steady now, the bond within him no longer a chaotic storm, but a harmonious rhythm, in sync with Illyra itself. Reluna stood beside him, her silver hair shimmering in the radiant glow. For the first time since Alex had arrived on this alien world, she looked at peace, though her eyes betrayed the weight of what still lay ahead. "It's stable," she said softly, her voice filled with cautious hope. "The bond is holding. Illyra, it's healing." Alex exhaled, relief washing over him. He could feel it, the planet's energy coursing through him, no longer wild and uncontrollable, but calm and purposeful. Yet, beneath that peace, a question gnawed at him. "What happens to me now?" he asked, turning to Reluna. She hesitated, her glowing eyes meeting his. "You are part of Illyra now," she said. "The bond is permanent. Your energy will sustain the core, just as its energy sustains you." Alex frowned, his chest tightening. "So, I can't leave. Ever?" Reluna's gaze dropped to the floor. "If you leave, the bond will break. Illyra will collapse, and everything we fought for will be lost." Alex's stomach churned. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was like a punch to the gut. "So, that's it. My life isn't mine anymore." "It is," Reluna said quickly, stepping closer. "But it's also Illyra's now. You're not just a visitor, Alex. You're its guardian, its savior. Without you, none of this would exist." Alex ran a hand through his hair, the weight of her words settling on him. He had never asked for this responsibility, never wanted to be anyone's savior. But as he looked around at the glowing chamber and felt the steady pulse of the planet's life force, he realized he couldn't turn away. "What about you?" he asked quietly. "What happens to you?" Reluna's expression softened, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I am tied to Illyra as much as you are. My role is to guide the bond, to ensure its strength. But—" she hesitated, her gaze flickering to the glowing core. "Now that the bond is complete, I am free in a way I haven't been before. My people may be gone, but through you, their legacy survives." Alex studied her, his anger and frustration fading into something more complex. He had hated her for dragging him into this, but now he saw her for what she truly was, someone who had carried the weight of her world's survival alone for far too long. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," he said, his voice firm. Reluna looked at him, her glowing eyes wide with surprise. "Alex." He held up a hand. "I didn't ask for this, and I'm still not thrilled about it. But if I'm going to be stuck here, I'm not doing it half-heartedly. We'll figure this out together." For the first time, Reluna's smile reached her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. As they stepped out of the temple, the world of Illyra greeted them with renewed vibrance. The trees glowed brighter, their crystalline leaves singing a harmonious melody. The rivers shimmered like molten silver, their waters flowing with purpose. Even the air felt different, lighter, freer. "It's beautiful," Alex said, his voice filled with awe. "This is what Illyra was always meant to be," Reluna replied, her gaze sweeping over the rejuvenated landscape. Alex nodded, but a thought lingered in the back of his mind. What about the shades? Are they gone? Reluna's expression grew serious. Not entirely. They are part of Illyra's history, echoes of its pain. But with the bond stable, they will remain dormant, unable to harm us. "Dormant isn't gone," Alex said warily. "No," Reluna admitted. "But as long as we protect the core, they cannot rise again." Alex sighed, the enormity of his new role sinking in. He wasn't just a guardian. He was a protector of an entire world, its past, present, and future. "You're sure I'm the right guy for this?" he asked, a hint of humor in his voice. Reluna smiled. "Illyra chose you, Alex, and so far, it hasn't been wrong." As they walked through the forest, Alex felt something shift within him. The bond was no longer just a burden. It was a part of him, as natural as breathing. And though he still missed his old life, he couldn't deny the connection he felt to Illyra, to its beauty and its pain. For the first time since this journey began, he felt like he belonged. "You know," Alex said, glancing at Reluna, This isn't the worst place to spend the rest of my life. Relumna laughed, a sound so light and genuine that it made Alex smile. I'll take that as a compliment. As they reached a hill overlooking the rejuvenated landscape, Alex stopped, taking in the view. This is just the beginning, isn't it? He asked. Relumna nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. It is. Illyra's story isn't over. And neither is yours. Alex took a deep breath, the weight on his shoulders feeling a little lighter. He didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but for the first time, he felt ready to face them. Together, they stood on the hill, guardians of a world reborn, ready to embrace the unknown.